Welcome to Extracurricular. I am your co-host, Eddie Geller.
And I'm your other co-host, Stephanie Vanos. I am a school board member for Orange County Public Schools, District 6, but I am here today, as I always am, unofficially.
What a wonderful guest we have today to talk about FSBA. Steph, who'd we talk to today?
We talked to Joe McGehee. He's the Director of Advocacy and Legislative Services, very official, for the Florida School Board Association. And I know Joe in connection with my work with legislatively and with advocacy from the Orange County School Board.
Well, I thought it was such a lovely conversation. And Joe, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the interview, Joe, just a wonderful human being who was just so delighted to be on the pod. Not that any guest has not been delighted to be on the podcast, though sometimes maybe you don't love being badgered by me on this podcast, but you're always happy to be here. But Joe was especially enthusiastic about being on the pod, and it kind of showed. So I like Joe.
He brought a great energy.
And I think there's a lot to learn about FSBA and how school board advocacy and public school advocacy happens on a state level, and also just some interesting tips about how you yourself can be a better advocate. Not you, Stephanie, but you, the listener. And there might be a listener named Stephanie as well, and in which case I am talking to you, but not you, Stephanie Vanos.
If you were born between 1975 and 1980, there's a good chance your name is Stephanie. But also, I think one important thing to remember about the Florida School Board Association is that it is made up of school board members across the state of Florida, and they really direct the legislative platform all to say that your school board member and who you elect for your school board member is very important, because that person not only has an influence on your local district and local platform, but also on the state platform. So just a reminder, school board elections are very important, and who you elect has a big influence on education policy in the state.
That is very true. Have you thought about whether you're going to run for school board again? Is that something that's crossed your mind?
Well, what I want to focus on is the election that's on August 18th. I was actually out knocking doors this morning, reminding voters to make a plan. So
I thought it was so funny that people just did not expect that you were going to knock doors, that you were just going to show up and talk, which is fine. I mean, people are busy, but you kind of surprised some folks by saying, give me a list. Let me knock some doors.
Well, what was also surprising is I did not intend to show up and talk. I actually intended to show up and knock doors, but I got to do both. So it was wonderful to be there. And what was really great about this canvas is there were so many young people out there. So I love seeing young people getting involved, understanding how important our local elections are.
I love it. That's perfect. All right. Well, if you're new to this podcast, please do consider subscribing us, rating us on iTunes. Steph, what can they rate us?
5 stars only.
5 stars only. And following us on Instagram at extracurricular_podcast. Steph, we do have one star rating on iTunes. What do you think they were mad at?
Wait, what? This is the first time hearing about this.
Yeah, so I was checking iTunes. I was checking our iTunes rating, and we have one star rating. I think they were maybe they're mad about your positions on e-scooters or AI. I don't know, but they were trying to punish us.
Well, maybe they're just trying to be a rebel. Who knows?
You've had a busy week on the school board, so I got a few things I want to dig into. You voted on a couple of policies. Well, one policy especially that got a lot of attention. Do you want to talk about your micro-mobility policy at OCPS?
Yeah, so we did have a busy meeting this past Tuesday. We voted on a couple of policies. One of them was on e-scooters and e-bikes, and it was actually a unanimous vote. The board agreed to limit the use of these devices for our schools, and you are not allowed to basically park an e-bike or e-scooter on our campus. And I say that because that's really all we can control. We really can't prevent people from riding on the streets and all of that.
Well, we could send you out there to run them down.
I'm not here to run anyone down, but it does prevent anyone from parking on our campuses unless they have a learner's permit or a driver's license.
Well, I commend you on this. Would you say this is one of the first in the country? I mean, have you seen other folks do this?
I know there's a couple of districts that have prevented the parking of devices up through 8th grade, but I do think this is the first one that requires that you have a learner's permit or a driver's permit to park on a campus.
I know we've talked about it a little bit here, but now the policy is worth rehashing. Can you talk about maybe why you implemented this policy? I mean, it's probably obvious on its face, but still worth explaining. And maybe a little bit of a rebuttal, because I think people are mostly supportive, but of course there's always some folks who dissent. So I was wondering if you could speak to those two things.
Yeah, this came up because we had, a lot of students during arrival, right before school arrival and right after school dismissal that are out on our streets all at once. And I think that's really why kind of this came to our attention. There are many areas in the county where, students are out, weaving scooters and bikes in and out of traffic on busy streets. Other areas where they are overcrowding sidewalks, and other areas where, I wouldn't say necessarily overcrowding sidewalks, but there's some, we received some concerns from community members about, young students on, let's say, scooters on sidewalks and, kind of coming up on people walking on sidewalks and just kind of not really knowing, I would just say, like, the etiquette of, being a pedestrian, being a cyclist. This kind of fits kind of in between. And then also just not following regular traffic laws. I know in one of my nearby school districts, there was a scooter that went through someone's windshield.
Oh my goodness.
And I heard from the person who owned the car and who was driving the car at the time. And this person was following all the rules. And again, it's just very young people who don't really know the rules of the road, don't understand the power of the device that they're operating in, combined with the fact that with school, they're all out at the same time. And just, I think, causing really big safety issues. We have had a few deaths in our school district, unfortunately, with students on these devices. And so and we are now, about to start a new school year. We don't really have any rules that have been put out by our counties or cities or state. And so we just felt that we needed to do something in order to just keep our kids safe and, hopefully prevent deaths. It was not an easy decision. And frankly, I would have much preferred our counties or cities to have rules or laws and really good enforcement, but we just don't have that. And I also, I'll cut to your comment in a second, but just want to make sure this isn't to me like blaming our counties and cities. I think all of us were kind of thinking that the state was going to do something. There was a bill that went through the legislature this year, and it was not vetoed until July. And so it's left all of us, I would say, sort of in a lurch.
Gotcha. Okay, and what about to the part of, thank you for walking through that. What do you say to the parents who say, this is how my kid gets to school? What am I going to do now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I would say is a lot of the parents who are saying that are parents whose students are riding with helmets, they're following the rules, they're doing the right thing. And honestly, I feel for them because I think there are a lot of kids who are out there following the rules and being courteous and wearing their helmets and doing the right thing. And so I to those parents, I say thank you. And honestly, if all parents were ensuring their kids were riding that way, we would not be in this situation. So I understand their frustration. If you are outside of the 2 miles of school, obviously you're eligible for bus service. And I would also note that human-powered scooters and human-powered bikes are still allowed. You could still walk to school. I know it's not as cool. I know it's not as fun. I know it's not as quick. But those things are still allowed. And, I say that as a parent who I did. We live within a 1 to 2 mile kind of radius of our high school. And my daughter rode her regular old bike to school when she was a freshman and sophomore. I mean, did she think it was the coolest thing? No. But did it get the job done? Yes. Did she get hot? Yes. But it still works. And it's always worked.
And just to clarify, when you say human powered, you mean people actually pedaling or using their legs, not like Matrix style humans in some sort of battery situation in which their essence is turned into battery power. Not that kind of human powered.
I never even considered that. So yes, just regular old bikes that we all used when we were younger. Yes.
Well, I'm sure 0% of the audience had considered that when you said human powered, but you hate The Matrix. That's a movie that you severely dislike.
I'm so uninterested. I just want to watch it. No.
Okay.
I know that's probably the most controversial thing that will be said on this podcast today.
Yeah, that is true. I love The Matrix. I think it's an incredible movie. Okay. Let's also talk about something that we've brought up a number of times is the AI policy. And you talk about this a little in the interview, so we don't have to necessarily step on that, but can you just talk about like what was passed and talk about your vote for just a second? Yeah,
the school board has been working for several months trying to put together an AI policy. I do think an AI policy was needed because there were just a variety of rules. Not all teachers understood kind of what was expected and what should be done. And students, it varied from class to class. I've heard a lot of complaints from both teachers and students about AI. And so I think a policy was needed. The school board worked very hard to put one together, as did the district staff. There were some surveys that went out to some stakeholders. There were also several student town halls, and some of those thoughts were incorporated into the policy. All in all, I mean, I think it was extremely thoughtful policy. I think a lot of parts of it were good and were needed. And so I am proud of the policy for the most part. But one sticking point for me has always been, I do believe that students should be able to opt out of using AI as for instructional purposes. And that was not something that the majority of the board agreed with. And it seemed that it was not something that the district agreed with. And so it was not included in this policy, which is why I voted against it.
Well, I appreciate you standing on business. When the rest of the board votes against you, do you think about name calling? Do you think about how can you attack them at how they're most vulnerable to make them sorry for voting not your way?
Wow. Never do I think that. So no, I want to be very clear. I think this is what I think. I think it is healthy when people don't always agree. I think it is healthy to show that we cannot agree on everything and still move forward. I also think this is something, and I think this is something that will definitely come back before the board. Mm-hmm. I see where a lot of this is going. I see a lot of the tide turning. And actually, right after we voted, there was that student conference. I can't remember where it was. I don't know if it was in New York or DC.
I forget where it was. But
it was a student conference where student leaders created their own student policy about AI. Sure enough, it had an opt-out provision for students in it. So, and honestly, when we had our student town halls, students, and at least the one in my district, which was at Evans High School, shout out to Evans High School, students definitely agreed that they should be able to opt out of using AI in school. So I think it'll come back around.
Well, two points to make, if I may. One is it looks like there's going to be a state policy which is going to actually require, correct me if I'm wrong, an opt-in that you have to affirmatively decide you want AI to be used. Is that correct?
That's how I'm reading it. I actually need to go back and read it more thoroughly, but I heard that it did have an opt-in.
And I just want to say, I'm grateful for your advocacy on this issue. I think there is a chasm between folks who believe AI is going to be this like great, powerful, important thing, and I would say I'm on the other side, in which I think Gen AI should just, and I've said this before on the podcast, should be as far away from students, other than a sort of like literacy, this is what it is, and like this is how you use it in a very like, cordoned off circumstance. I just think AI is really dangerous for cognitive offload reasons, for addiction reasons, data privacy, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the policy did do some of that work to address those things. But I think this is my observer as someone who, watches the board from the outside. I don't think there was enough attention from the board about how dangerous this technology is and the absolute, as I would think, nuclear bomb it has wrought on education in general. So, we'll see where it goes. Like you said, it'll come back, but that's just my take. And I'm just a white man with a podcast mic.
Well, I think the framework and probably the perspective that many people came from was sort of, well, AI's here. There's nothing we can really do. We have to prepare students for the future. So kind of move forward from that. And I mean, I want to say, and I said this in the meeting, I think we should have an AI literacy class for students. I think it's important that they understand how to use it, the best ways to use it, the benefits. I think there can be some really great benefits from AI, particularly in medicine and science and technology and engineering. I think there can be some really, really great benefits, but also the drawbacks. And to what you said, the over-reliance on technology, the decline in our interpersonal skills, and sort of the cognitive offloading and just decrease in creativity, potential detriments. I think those really need to be discussed in a literacy class. So, I mean, I definitely support a class. I think that really should have been the crux of the policy. And I hope that a strong AI literacy course is developed. And I did ask to review that as soon as it was ready. Well
said. Okay. One other a lot of heavy OCPS updates on this intro, but a lot took place this week. Last thing I want to get your thoughts on, the retirement announcement of the superintendent of OCPS, Maria Vasquez. Can you talk to, your reaction to that?
I was shocked. I knew, retirement was in the somewhat near future, but I was very surprised when she said that she'd be retiring at the end of this year. I have a lot of respect for Dr. Vasquez because I think she has navigated, I know she has navigated some very complex waters, and she has had to make some really difficult decisions for this district. And I've said before, I think she's an extremely savvy superintendent, which I think is a skill that is absolutely necessary, particularly in the state of Florida, particularly in a district as large as ours. I think she has done really good work. I've appreciated how she's kind of come up and has served in so many different positions in Orange County Public Schools. So we will be searching for a new superintendent this year. But also I am on the positive. I'm looking forward to, last year working with her, and I think we will continue to do some good things on the board and in the district. So we're just looking forward to, having a positive last year.
I'm thinking about applying for the superintendent position. What advice do you have for me?
Good luck.
Okay, thank you. Are you going to twist any arms on my behalf?
Never.
Okay, well,
sorry.
Why even be in a relationship with a school board member if she's not going to help me become the superintendent? That's what I don't understand.
I am actually looking forward to the process and seeing who applies and kind of seeing it out. But it'll be, I think one of the things I'm honestly, if I'm just being honest, one of the things I'm not looking forward to is it will take time, and it's time that, you want to spend kind of furthering things that you care about within the district. And I know one way to do that is through hiring the superintendent, but, it's going to take, I think, a big part of our time this year.
I mean, I think just go to ChatGPT and say, Chat, who should our next superintendent be?
Maybe we should make some more AI created flyers. I cannot with the AI flyers. God. I can't. They make me so mad.
If you're out there and you're making AI flyers, I'm not trying to shame you, but I am saying consider getting a Canva account and making something human created. AI flyers, we're not a fan of AI flyers on this podcast, I'm sorry to say. And someone listening to this has made a flyer with AI, and I'm not trying to come at you, but please reconsider that decision. That's all I'm asking.
Let's move on to Countdown. You're going to be busy in the next couple of weekends.
Well, it's just this one weekend.
But it's in a couple of weeks.
Well, it's this coming weekend.
Okay, so everything I've said is untrue. You will be busy in the next weekend at Countdown. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I know you talked about your important work at the Orange County Public Schools School Board. I will be doing important work at the Countdown Improv Festival, which is, I believe, the biggest improv festival in the country. Please don't fact check me on that, but also you can fact check me on that. And if we're wrong, please send us an email at podcastextracurricular@gmail.com. But it is an improv festival for single, duo, and trio acts. That's why it's called Countdown 3, 2, 1. So I'm doing a couple shows. I'm doing a show on Friday, a countdown specific version of Salute and Happy Days, a show that I've talked about on this podcast. And then I'm doing another show on Saturday night on the main stage at 7:15, I believe. I hope that's right. Called Nash Buff with two of my dear friends, Liz Marcucci and Danny Mora. And it's just the three of us. We take a suggestion and do some wild and wacky improv for about 20 minutes. But I'm very excited for it. I'm really delighted to be part of this festival for the third year in a row. And the festival's been around for, I think, a decade. So I'm just grateful to Kelly Buttermore and Justin Peters for continuing to have us and for the incredible festival they've produced. And we love making art. And the Countdown Improv Festival, I can tell you, does not have any AI generated flyers. So we love them for that.
For the Salute, kind of, I guess, somewhat Salute type show on Friday night, is there a guest?
No, we're actually doing it with Countdown Improv Stories. So I think improvisers will come up and kind of tell a story about the Countdown Improv Festival, and we'll do scenes based off that. Are you going to be at any of the shows?
I would like to be at the shows, but I will not be able to attend this year.
Wow.
I know. But you know what? I did want to say there's a local improv show coming up too, August 13th.
Oh, that's right.
But you will not be in that show. But maybe you will. I don't know.
Maybe
they should invite you.
Nobody invited me. speaking of missed opportunities, I just want to be on mic and apologize for missing National Girlfriend Day, which you alerted me to right before this podcast began. And I just want to say that I am truly sorry for not having
Oh my God, stop talking right now.
Anything. And next year I will.
Big day. Big celebratory day.
What would you have wanted for National Girlfriend?
I'm not even. Okay, we're moving on. Let's get to our interview with our friend, Joe McGehee.
I just want you to know I allowed you to go through that transition as a belated gift for National Girlfriend Day.
Wow, so generous. Thank you. Welcome to the podcast. I am looking forward to this conversation with my friend and the Director of Advocacy and Legislative Services. Sometimes I don't remember exactly what you do because you just seem to do so much over at FSBA. But Joe McGehee is the Director of Advocacy and Legislative Services for the Florida School Board Association that we lovingly refer to as FSBA. And so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. A long-time listener, first-time guest.
We're so happy to have you. Joe, you are in the running for maybe the nicest podcast guest we've had so far. Like, for the listeners, like, Joe was texting us before the show, like, can I bring drinks? Can I bring food? Just so kind and accommodating. Not that our other guests haven't been nice, but I feel like you were going the extra mile. I'm sure that's just who you are, Joe.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm just reciprocating you all with the extra mile by just even having me here and having me on here. So very grateful for the
we're grateful to have you.
He's also set the standard for future guests.
Future guests know what you have to bring.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Well, like I said, we have talked before about the Florida School Board Association, but maybe you could just give us a little bit of background. What is FSBA, and how did you end up serving there?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to give you the abbreviated version.
No, we have time to fill,
got time.
So go for
good.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, FSBA has been around since the 1930s. Just as an idea, it said, all right, we're 67 districts, 67 different school boards, but if we find things that they can all agree on, all advocate for, let's get them together and let's have one unified voice for education. So that's what it's been since then. I knew of FSBA through my time with the Superintendent's Association, FADS, ironically. I was an intern there during law school. So I went to law school to do public education advocacy, and everything that I did in law school was centered around education. I did litigation stuff, I did legislative stuff, everything I could. And then after I get out, I worked for a law firm where I was doing anything but I had an amazing mentor and boss who freed me up to do whatever I wanted. He said, if you want to do something, go pursue it. And 99% of the time it was pro bono. So I was doing CLEs, I was doing PDs, I was doing all kinds of free things for school districts. I was even doing teacher representation for free. And the teachers union eventually brought me on as outside counsel on a few matters, nothing major, but I just stayed in the space long enough. And Andrea Messina, the CEO of FSBA, called me and asked me to come in and interview for this position. And that's the story. FSBA itself is the association of every school board member that opts in the state. We have a little over 350 members right now, which is, I think, the vast majority of school board members in Florida. Mm-hmm. So, of which you are a member.
I am. I'm a proud member. I'm not certified yet because that does require filling out a lot of forms, but I have been to all of the trainings to become a certified member.
Wait, what is a certified member?
You're certified. It just shows that you have taken the classes and I don't know, can you describe it better? You've taken the classes,
yeah,
you know
not
things.
The classes,
and
can you put this on LinkedIn once you become certified?
Of course, yes.
Okay. You can,
Some
people
put in their
do.
email signatures. So we do all these like professional developments that just, you're term limited. There's only so long you have in this program to, I call it a program, like it's grad school, but you're an elected official, but you only have so long. So we want to fast track you and just have everyone learning from the wisdom of other school board members, and then also increasing collaboration with your superintendent, other school boards. Just an informed board member is a powerful board member. So that's what the certified board member thing is all about. And
it really just reflects a wide variety of classes and workshops that you can take. I know one of the ones that I love the most, I mean, no one will be surprised, but the budget, there's a one on budget, and they have the CFOs from various from various school districts come, and they share information, and it was a 2-day course, I think, in Gainesville. I learned so much from that. I just found it so interesting, but there's many different workshops. So
yeah, we do so many
training.
Yeah, we have a great team.
One of the things that I find, as you were describing FSBA, you talked about if we can find some issues where all school board members agree, and it's a tough climate out there, and it can be, some people describe it as really polarized. So I think do you find it hard to find issues that everybody can agree on, or is it relatively easy because it's really not partisan to support public education.
Yeah, public education itself is not partisan. I think we all agree on the core things, right? Increased funding. We want our teachers to be better. We want our student outcomes higher. We want achievement higher across the board. What's hard is the diversity of the approach, right? What works in Monroe County, where property taxes function differently, the rate is different from Jefferson County or Wakulla County, right? Things are so different. And I think, ironically, those differences are the strength of the association, right? It's getting together and learning, oh my gosh, this worked in Brevard County, didn't even think about that over here in Duval County. That shared perspective helps shape our approach. But the core things we all agree on, any school board member from the HIP is going to tell you, what do you need? Oh my gosh, yes, we need increased BSA funding. We need increased transportation funding. Our school safety funding doesn't always account for the unexpected costs and the burdens, things like that. So all those things we can definitely just readily agree on. But sometimes it's the approach that differs. And then that is the strength of the association, is that we share those different approaches. So everyone knows what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's such a great answer. And, of course, there's FSBA, but then there are also smaller groups. There's the small districts have their own group, and some of the larger districts have a group, because I think it's helpful to look at the state as a whole, but it is also helpful to look at other districts who are, more similar to yours when you're trying to make policy and some decisions.
100%. Yeah, we have the consortium, small districts. We have the Hillsborough, Pinellas crew. Like, there's so many different groups. And so what's cool is that FSBA provides room for all these groups to meet. At our conference, all the subgroups meet too and come together. And we also have what do you call them? Committees. I'm in charge of not in charge. I'm the staff liaison for 4 different committees, so it's been a lot. But
I'm going to edit this so it's going to say you're in charge of all those committees.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, yes, I am in charge. No, but we have this advocacy committee on which you are a prime member, Stephanie. We have all these conversations about what we're going to do in the session, what we did last session, what works, what doesn't work, and then everyone comes together. All 67 districts have a seat on the advocacy council, and they say, okay, I have this member to sponsor a bill, but it does this to our schools. I'm going to meet with them. I'm going to set up a meeting, do this, this, and this. And then they share that information with the group. And then we know, what is our approach for this bill or this issue, or how are we going to help get this funding increased and things like that.
You have a lot going on.
You don't say. There's the group of me's in the other 49 states, right? The school board associations, government affairs people get together once a year. Mm-hmm. And that's in Texas, that's Rhode Island, that's, I think, almost all 50 states have a me that does school board advocacy work. I think Florida is the only one with one person. So it's like a team. Texas has a whole squad, and they're all cool. But yeah.
Well, because we just talked about your role in these committees, but you also have other work you do. So can you talk about the other work that you do I know you have other work you do too, but talk about the other work you do at FSBA besides sort of being in charge of these committees.
Oh, yeah, of course. So we just do a lot of the legislative outreach, right? And that's to the House members, the Senate members, as well as executive branch where we can. I work with DOE, that's Department of Ed, any chance I can. Essentially just making meetings, collecting data. I also work with the CFOs in every district. They've been great. Anytime I ask for a meeting, their advocacy team will get together with me and just equip me with, I'm not a finance guy, right? I studied classics and then went to law school, on a whim after I was going to get a PhD in classics. My mom became ill during my master's and I went on medical leave. But I say all this to say that Excel was hard for me to learn, and Microsoft Excel. So finance stuff is hard. I say all this to say that my job is to condense knowledge and help equip school board members to be better and stronger advocates, which is hard to do because some of you are incredible advocates. You are an incredible advocate. So how can I help you, right?
No, I think you really do an incredible job. And some of the feedback that I've received from other members since you have taken over in this role is just how warm and friendly you are, because I do know other members who are intimidated by this process and they're just not as familiar because maybe they don't have an advocacy background. Maybe they came from the classroom or, maybe they weren't a lawyer, or whatever. So for them, it's a very intimidating process, and you welcome people in. And I think it sounds silly to say this, but you don't want to feel stupid. And I feel like you really help people see their value and what they can contribute. And I just think that's really powerful to motivating people to then be more engaged and care more. So I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Please save that clip because I'm going to put in a special file to play when I've had a rough day. No, thank
Joe
you for
deserves a
saying
raise.
Yeah, I think for me, it's also new to me and scary to me. So I look at all the school board members as we're all on a team. So what can I do to help elevate the team, help get the team ready to go? And they all do the same thing for me. We have board members that don't come to a single advocacy meeting, but text and talk to their representatives regularly and are working on our platform's behalf all the time. So I'm always striving to help equip our school board members and also be more like our school board members because they are such strong advocates.
So one of the things I'm always curious about is what it's like in these rooms when you're meeting with members of the House, the Senate, executive. Like, can you talk about what, and I know this is really broad, but like, what's it like in a meeting that's going well, and what's it like when it's not going well?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, when it's going well, like you're literally high-fiving, like, yeah. Sometimes you finish the policy discussion in 20 seconds, and then you spend the next 5 minutes talking about Bad Bunny or but honestly, one where it goes well is one where I actually get a lot of questions, and it's like, okay, if we implement this, what is the impact in XYZ or what? Because members are very smart. I mean, they know this stuff very well, and they also have to know the.
Well, maybe some of them, but
no comment.
Joe did not say that.
That was Eddie.
So, but yeah, I mean, they also have to know, transportation. They have to know health. They have to know education. So they really just need to know, like, the meetings that go well are the ones where you give the information as succinctly as possible. I don't want to sit up there and filibuster. I don't want to sit up there and lecture to them. I just want to say, hey, listen, you supported this measure. I know this thing is going through committees and you support it, but it is going to negatively adverse school district funding and XYZ through this. And the ones that go well are ones where they listen, ask questions, and then say, thank you.
Yeah.
The ones that don't go well, but the ones that don't go well are ones where you're like, listen, I'm voting up this, but I got 5 minutes. If you want to talk, let's talk. And even the ones that don't go well, I appreciate that time. If I already know how they're going to vote, I'm at least going to give them the information so that, hey, don't say no one told you. And then also I use that time to build the rapport with them. I said, all right, hey, I appreciate you telling me you're not going to vote on this. I completely understand. I had practice with this because when I was a litigation attorney, I would go into a motion hearing and the judge is like, I'm not granting this, but go ahead. And in a lot of ways, I love that because like now I'm swinging for the fences. Before I was trying to bunt and get on first. It's like, now I'm just going to swat and give you everything on this. But yeah, in times when it doesn't go well, Michael Jordan had this quote, right? He said, I never lose, I either win or I learn. So I take this opportunity to learn more about the motivations at play in the room and why they're not supporting it. And a lot of times, some members vote on education stuff based on how they feel about their school board or superintendent, which is crazy. Some have cultivated an amazing relationship, and then some don't like their public education system at all and blame their board or superintendent. So if a meeting's not going well, I really try to get to the root of it as well. I'm like, all right, so what's the story here, right? Like, who wronged you?
Who hurt you?
Yeah.
Has there ever been a time where you've been in a room and a lawmaker has said, I'm not going to vote for it, or I'm not going to side with you, basically, and you have been able to change their mind?
Been able to change their mind? Not quite. Not like where they actually voted on it. I've had exchanges where a member goes, listen, you're right, this is bad, but there's more political capital at stake. I have to vote this way and move it this way, but I appreciate you. And just so you know, there's this thing on the other end. And then there's like an exchange of information that leaves me feeling better about the meeting than I did when they told me they weren't voting that way. But right now, I think the current climate is no one is changing their votes one way or the other, which is can be frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of what I was thinking. So I think in order to, I feel like in order to remain hopeful, you have to really have the long-term game in mind. And you have to know that you might not get what you want, or you might not change people or persuade people, even though you are extremely talented at that. You might not be able to, just because of, like you said, things out of your control, the political climate, but that it doesn't mean that we don't, it doesn't mean that we stop trying.
No, we can't stop trying. And even, that's why I love that Michael Jordan quote, right? Because.
And who's Michael Jordan?
Oh gosh, he was a baseball player actually for a long time. So,
Go Bulls.
Yeah. I did not know you were a Chicago fan.
I'm from Chicago.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you are.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I forgot. Yeah. But I guess what it comes down to is even when we don't win, we've moved it. So you have to think long term, like you just said. I mean, that's great. You have to think in the long play. And so I'll give you an example is Schools of Hope, right? They expanded the rule last year. And for those of you that are listening that don't know about this issue, Stephanie mobilized on this so well, talked to so many people about this, and so did so many school board members. But essentially, a avenue of charter schools called Hope Operators were allowed to occupy any available space. I'm doing air quotes with my fingers, so those of you listening know, any available space in a public school district. They were allowed to occupy that space at no cost to them, right? So at cost to the public school district. That was so broadly written that the day it went live, I think it was like over 400, it was over 600 applications across Florida to occupy space in a school. And the way it was written, we have ESE classrooms that are designed to be more spacious for our self-contained kids, the kids that need more space. We have one district with, they have like an airplane hangar where they house all their stuff to do career and technical training. So like welding and mechanical engineering and all this stuff, that's technically on a space report available space because there aren't butts and seats, right? I say all this to say that that rule was so broad, we create a lot of noise about it. But at the end of the day, repealers were filed in the House and the Senate to completely defund and eliminate the schools of hope, which a lot of people supported. Those obviously failed, but in the failure, created leverage for conversations to happen that said, okay, let's put guardrails on so that it's no longer any available space, and let's look into what available space is and make sure it's fair to the district and make sure that the cost is somewhat recouped. So I say all this to say that those bills were filed, and if you just pull it up on a legislative tracker, they were filed, never even made it to a committee. But they were very successful, right? They didn't set out what they were set to do in written statute, proposed statute, but they accomplished a lot behind the scenes. So I always look at conversations as, and another example is FSBA's platform, right? We had full day VPK on our last. We wanted to fully fund pre-kindergarten, right? We wanted to, there's all these studies about how good it is for students and the community and how it could free up economic availability for parents. But at the end of the day, there's a $400 to $600 million price tag on offering it to all students or for offering it full day.
Right.
So I say all this to say that we put it on our platform. It went nowhere. But the fact that we've had it on our platform last year and this year, the conversations that I'm having with members are, okay, yeah, I've heard about this, I know. And then it's not new next year. It may not happen next year, but the year after that, right, we'll talk about it more and more and more. And slowly, because we're playing the long game, they know that we're there for beneficial public policy on education. So they trust us and they rely on us, and they know they've heard us talk about this 5 years, 10 years, and we never gave up. So they continue to hear this, and then it's not a new concept when there is finally a change in the winds or a change in funding, and there is that funding there. They understand how beneficial it is because they've heard me swing for the fences enough about it.
And thank you for doing that. And I also think it helps because you can understand the specific reasons, maybe not just the price tag, but other reasons why they might be opposed to something. And then that helps you kind of target your communication the next time you talk about it. I think there's some value in that too.
100%. I mean, it's all relationship management, and these are all individuals, right? They have different constituents. We talked about how diverse Florida is on a geographic scale, right? We have the forests and the hills in North Florida. We have the beaches in South Florida and all along the coast. These are all different priorities. It shapes the way people think, the way their constituents see the world, and what they want to see out of these elected officials. So at the end of the day, they have to return home with something for them too, right? Even if they helped education statewide, some areas are doing really well for their schools. Their schools are amazing. We don't need to change anything. It's all going well, but they also understand that. So.
Yeah. So I am going to ask maybe about a high. So this was your first year in this role.
Yes.
Well, let me first ask this: How was it? Do you still want it? Do you want to remain in this job?
Is now the time to tell you I'm interviewing. No, this was an incredible year, but it was also incredibly difficult. Like, I don't want to lie and say that it's all peaches here, because we had so many once in a decade and then once in like a half a century things that have so many all in one year. There was just in August, I think I started in May, there was overlap with me and Dr. Danielle Thomas, who held the position before me, for a few weeks. And then I was running with it. And then the Schools of Hope rule happened. The president impounded federal funds that were set to go directly to schools in July. So that money just didn't arrive. So now districts are number crunching. This has never happened. What do we do? Like, how do we handle this? And I have school board members calling me saying, all right, our general counsel said that we could, the lawsuit would work if we filed it and this and that. I'm like, all right, let's just, let's everyone slow down before because I'm an attorney, I'm also helping districts with just anything legal. That's not just statute interpretation. That's also general questions like, can I have a closed meeting regarding XYZ, or can I do this or that, and things that their general counsels are also answering. I work with their general counsels to answer things. So I say all this to say that so many things happened legally, legislatively, executively that just don't always happen. So it's been crazy, but it's been so much fun. And, I went to law school to do public ed advocacy. I imagined that there would be years like this and times like this where it would be so necessary for people to be talking and sharing the most reliable data we could to have these conversations. So it was a crazy year.
When you think about what your first year was going to be like, did you have any preconceived notions that were sort of, that you realized were wrong or something you didn't expect about your first year? I mean, maybe
Oh,
there are
gosh.
many things.
Yeah, there were many things. I mean, just rule expand. I didn't realize that, when a law is passed, it's up to the whatever department of the executive is going to draft the rule and promulgate the rule to apply the law. I didn't realize how much of the legal stuff comes out of the rules. I thought the law passed, it's signed. All right, now I need to work with school boards to interpret it. No. Now we have a rulemaking, and we get to advocate further during the rulemaking, right? So that was.
Oh, that's really fascinating.
Yeah, that was something else I wasn't anticipating. But it's funny, when I left the law firm, I was doing civil defense, so we were billing, just tons of billing. I know you know what that's like. I don't know your background. Are you an attorney? Or
No. I'm a video producer, video editor.
Very cool. Well, glad you're doing this.
Oh, yeah.
So I say all this to say that when I left the law firm, all my friends said, "Oh man, you're a lobbyist. They only work 2 months a year. You're going to be like golfing and hanging out, and you're going to be working Tuesday to Thursday, and we have to bill over here." And I was like, it's like, at least I don't have to bill. But there are days that I'm like, man, I'd rather bill. I will file a motion for summary judgment right now. Like, I'll spend all night writing another motion. And my wife was saying, all right, you're leaving the law firm, you're going to have so much more time. And then the legislature noticed an 11 p.m. meeting at 10 p.m. So I got back in the same suit I'm wearing now while we were watching Euphoria at home. I have to put on the suit, go back to the Capitol. So I say all that to say that the lifestyle change and like the way that the process works was new to me. I was so used to legal things in courts, and judges aren't really going to take hearings after 5 o'clock. Yeah. So it was one of those things where now I'm just available at all hours during session, and there were 8 sessions in the last 18 months. So there were lobbyists that during the property tax session, because that all happened so quickly, they canceled vacations and came back. Like, I still haven't taken a vacation this summer. It's just everything was happening. The budget session, the property tax session, everything just happened. So to answer your question, I was not prepared for the flow of that.
Yeah.
Right. You hear of a regular session. I think in the past, like 10 years ago, there was regular session, and rarely there'd be a special session on a particular issue, or maybe we need more time on the budget, we'll extend session. But the last 2 sessions, it has felt like the norm, which was not the norm before.
Yeah.
It's wild when you mentioned Schools of Hope and that extended session, last year. It's hard to believe that was only a year ago. That almost seems like it was 5 years ago.
That's when I started. I started in the middle of that.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. What would you say was, so I'm going to ask, the highlight and low light. What would you say is a highlight from this year, maybe a bill that, or, an allocation or something that's really positive for schools that you were happy to see, and then maybe one that is not so positive and they were really disappointed?
Yeah, how do I choose? Despite how much we're fighting in the economy and how we're not getting all the BSA increases that we've been lobbying for, I still think that we've had wins where there have been so many cuts across budgets statewide. We've at least been able to get something. Like, we wanted 5% increase to the BSA. We got 1.8. I mean, it's not great, but a lot of programs were cut. So we we barely increased or maintained funds that were on the chopping block for a while. School start times last year was a big victory for schools. We also had, we're helping fast track career and technical students to have, different pathways to get their diploma and their degree, so that they're ready for the job market and they're not having to take all these gen ed courses. They're able to specialize. So schools are becoming more adaptive to students entering the workforce. We had big victories there. And the Schools of Hope thing you mentioned, though we didn't pass a bill that did anything to that, there was enough noise created from school board members and superintendents contacting their parent groups and so many interested people that understood the impacts that there were helpful negotiations behind the scenes that amended the rules, right? So things like that were big victories to me, because it shows that even a failed conversation like we were talking about earlier has such positive impact. Even if we don't pass a bill, we weren't able to champion a cause we really wanted, we at least move the needle somewhat. And in the future, when we do get a great issue, or we do get a great issue passed, we'll remember that there were all these times when it didn't happen, and we finally got success because we never stopped pushing. So that's like the light out of it, is that I feel good about it. What motivates me to do it is that I know that there will always be another day, and if we don't pass the stuff we want this session, we're going to get it next session. We're not going to stop, right? Low light.
Were there any? I don't know.
I loved everything.
Everything was great.
No, it was, it's hard when people have already made up their minds based on who filed, right? Based on who filed a bill, based on what we want to do. We're not taking in data. That was the hard part for me, because I'm such, in my background, I go before a judge, and it felt like at least maybe 51% of the time, the judge is making his decision based on what a law professor told me this. A judge always wants to know who the weasel is, right? Which one of you is being a weasel in this courtroom today? It always felt like if you prepare and you come with data, and you present it in such a way that is not just persuasive, but honest and sincere, right? Humans we have a nose for sincerity. When you're sincere and you're left for something and you convey data that's not altered or manipulated, it's like, this is what is going to happen to students. This is what's going to hurt student academic success. I always thought that would change data. That would persuade a lot of people, right? Like I would leave these meetings with someone who wasn't going to vote my way and they would agree. The low light is so many times people agreed with everything I said and said, no, I can't vote the way you want me to vote. Come on, man.
Because you want to feel like there's something you can do
to
change their mind. And when they're basically saying, yep, I agree, I'm just reaching a different conclusion.
Yeah.
That doesn't leave you with anything.
I know.
It's tough.
It's under control.
That's a low light for me. And I had days where I was just like, man, what am I doing? But thankfully, I just remembered that we're playing the long game. Like you were saying earlier, we're playing the long game and we are always advocating for what's best for students. And I know that no matter the regime, no matter the party, no matter who's governor or Senate president or Speaker of the House, everybody wants that. So I know that deep down, if we can just convey it in the right way and we convey what's best for students and we're on that side, we're going to win. It may not be in one session, it might even be in 3 sessions, but we will eventually win.
Yeah.
I've never heard you say that, Steph, of another school, of another member who says, I completely agree with you, but I can't, support this motion or support that. Like, am I right? Like, I feel like that's not a thing that you've encountered much, to the best of my understanding.
I'll give you an example from this week. I'll give you an example that I had, right? So we worked on this AI policy and we worked really hard on it. And it started off in not, in my opinion, a great place, but it ended up in a really good place. And I think it's a really strong policy. And I appreciated the thoughtfulness and the work with all of my board members on it. But I also felt strongly that there should also be an opt-out for students, because I think there's a variety of reasons that students or parents may not want to use AI as an instructional tool. I don't think there's really any evidence to support that it benefits students in K-12.
Well, that's why I decided to not have children, is because I never want them to use AI.
but I mean, in all seriousness, and I think there's a variety of legitimate reasons. So I voted against a policy that I otherwise thought was excellent and honestly really well thought out, and I think a good thing, because of that. So I don't know, kind of a little bit answers your question.
Well, I think to the extent that I have a point, and we're figuring that out on the fly, but there's because school boards are nonpartisan, and even though obviously there are registered Democrats and Republicans, there's less of this like, the caucus has to do a certain thing. They have to vote a certain way. Leadership is telling me to do a thing. You don't really encounter that. You're all independent. You all think freely. Most of the board members at OC, one does think very freely, a little too freely. But I guess maybe the point I'm making is how things work differently on a local level, and the higher you go up on the in air quotes again, food chain, notoriety chain, like, that these things happen, and in a way, like, the less democratic it becomes, because if a representative knows they should do a thing and agrees with you and can't vote in that way that their constituency might agree with, like, that is anti-democratic. That's just how it works. And obviously when you get to the national level, I would imagine it's even more pernicious. So anyway, I think that's the point I was trying to make. Okay, but can I be a troublemaker? Am I allowed to do that? I'm a co-host of this podcast, so I do like to make a little trouble. You mentioned something, and I do have a point to this.
I'm getting nervous.
You should be. You should both be nervous. You mentioned something briefly. You mentioned school start times. And can you explain what happened there briefly?
Well, so this whole thing started before I came on at FSBA, and it was during that extended session that I worked on it and finished it off, but I would love for Member Vanos to talk about it.
Passing.
Damn you both.
Yeah. Because you know what it actually did to your school and the actual impact more so than I did. So I would,
So are you asking me a question?
Well, I was. So the point. All right, I will take the reins and then make my trouble. The point I was going to make. So school start times, and correct me if I get any of this wrong. Essentially, was it maybe 2 years ago that they passed a law that that what schools were going to have to, was it that they were going to have to study it or have to implement?
No, so it was, I think it gave school districts about 3 years or something like that to implement a policy where high schools would start no earlier than 8:30 and middle schools would start no earlier than 8.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then that was repealed this past year.
Then last year, I guess, in the last legislative session, it was repealed because a great majority of districts and school boards found that it would just be way too expensive to implement the change.
Right. Okay. So the point I was trying to make, Joe, you were wonderful, and FSBA seems like seems like a great organization, but there are times that Steph, you're not going to agree with what this organization is doing or advocating for. So I was kind of curious what your experience is in FSBA and how you deal with like, I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe 80% of the time you're like right on that same page, but maybe there's 20% where you're like, nah, I'm not feeling this. I don't know. Could you talk to that first?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's true.
We finally got there, folks.
I feel like that's true anyone on board too.
Sure, of course.
And it's funny you're talking about school start times because I'll actually go back to the earlier conversation you were having about bringing data and being like, but if you just see the data that it's actually healthier for high school students to start later and it's safer and their mental health is better and their academics are better and they're safer on the road and all of these things. I think, the Academy of American Academy of Pediatrics supported a later start time. And there was so much data showing that it really would benefit our students in many ways to start later. But it's not persuasive when school districts are struggling to make ends meet. They can't even afford the transportation that they currently have. It would require redoing buses. And I still am on the side. I think later start times for our high school students are healthier for them and better. But it just was a reality that a lot of school districts just found difficult to make happen. And you represent, not you necessarily you, but the Florida, School Board Association represents all the districts. And when the majority of them are saying, hey, we cannot make this change, our transportation can't handle it, our finances can't handle it. I'm not going to agree with every other member, and none of us will ever agree. I mean, that's why majority rules, really.
Yeah. Well, in theory.
I think any group of, I think we're talking about 350 school board members or members of the association currently. It might be a little more, it might be a little less, but if you go to a church that has 350 members, you're going to find a difference of like,
I'm Jewish, but in theory, yes.
You're going to find a difference in theological opinion from the people sitting in the same pew, right?
Right.
It can happen. We're like, I think 70% Republican and then certain percent NPA and then another percent Democrat, of course. But I say all this to say that when we agree, it's the big things. And I think that's what the association represents is we're there to stop the greatest harms. We're there to help the greatest goods. And those are the things that we can all agree on statewide. One thing is a tenet of the association, we don't support localized projects. We have a lot of school boards that said, hey, can you please just help us out with this like forestry project or is this like, well, we understand. I do agree that would help your school.
Yeah.
But we're here for the association. We're here for the greatest goods and the greatest evils, right? And that's sort of how we mobilize. So yeah, I think any group, no one's going to agree with this 100% of the time, but that is ironically the strength of the association, right? We've had, I think 2 presidents ago, we had a Democrat and then a Republican, and then so even our association leadership that is voted on and supported feels nonpartisan, despite the fact because it changes so frequently. So despite how things are statewide, despite how things are nationally, I think the school board members by and large and the superintendents focus exactly on what's local and what's best for their schools and students.
And I think for me, the real strength of the group is the training. I mean, going back again, I mean, I know we had a great bargaining training with Kevin Watson. He was excellent. I got so much out of that. He was so good. And like I mentioned before, the budget and governance. I mean, there are just so many different trainings that I think that's another strength of the group. And also just bringing school board members together because no offense to any of the organized parts of FSBA, but the best part about, having the biannual meetings are being able to catch up with other members in other districts because of Sunshine, we really can't talk to our other members about anything substantive before us, but I can talk to, Liz or Rebecca or, Robin or someone in a different district. And you can really learn a lot there. So just, I think bringing people together, Elizabeth and Santa Rosa. I mean, there's so many great members across the state. And I think just bringing everybody together, there's huge, huge benefit in just that.
Yeah. I mean, due to term limits, it's like, I know it's 8 years total, right? Mm-hmm. So that 8 years flies by. I mean, it's almost like a PhD program. It just goes so quickly. So the more that we can maximize your time in there, I think I agree with you. I think that's the number one strength after me, of course.
Sorry. I was excluding the obvious.
Yeah, of course. But no, the number one strength is your ability to go there and get that perspective and know what works and what doesn't. We have some school board members that have been around the block and know exactly what to do. And that knowledge, like I'm so scared that we lose that knowledge when they leave, but the association is there to kind of keep the torch going. So I completely agree with you.
Well, and I think just hearing you talk about this, there's an interesting piece of this that makes me think about when someone gets elected, and Steph, you were incredibly prepared to be a school board member, but there were so many things that you didn't know and didn't understand how to do. And I think for folks just listening to this, like, I just think that's an interesting aspect, that you can be elected, you can go out and campaign and say, this is what I want to do. I want to fund schools, or I want to, do X, Y, Z, but that there's an organization that's like, oh, okay, well, here's actually how to help you do your job. And obviously you've learned many, many things on the job and picked it up quickly, but to have an organization that's like, oh, this is how part of our job is helping you do your job now that you're elected and you're in office.
Yeah, I think that's a great part. Okay, I want to forecast a little bit for this next session. What do you think will be what are you expecting to see? What do you think will be maybe like one or two big areas in education that we'll see bills about?
Oh gosh, there are so many things that I think are coming down the works, but I do think that one thing we're going to continue to run up against is the economy, ironically, right? The members say, all right, we're going to pass any bill that increase the cost. Well, most bills increase cost. Most things we want to do to implement to help our students have some kind of cost associated. And then we also have all the other mandates, all the other costs. So I think one thing we might see that's going to help school districts is a continued push for administrative efficiency, right? Or just a deregulation of maybe outdated or unintentional mandates that come with really well-intentioned bills. And I'll give you an example. Number off the top of my head, I think it's 1006.23. That's the hazardous walking, the hazardous, you know that one. And that one essentially says, God, don't pull it up and quote me on this, but anywhere there's a hazardous walk, they define it too. It's like if a student if they're so many miles from a school and there's no paved walkway by a road that's 50 miles an hour for so long, and it's so trafficked that the state has to pay for the school district's transportation costs. That's a great bill. But there's one caveat. So it's all the way at the bottom, and it says, until the date of completion of the project of the paved road or the projected date of completion passes, whichever happens first. Well, you work in local government, the construction projects get pushed all the time. It happens. Right. And the mandate of funding from the state ends when that projected date happens. And if they're 6 months behind, now the school district has to pay for fuel, the bus, the driver, the insurance on the driver, and they may even just allocate a bus to a different route, but now you've redrawn the route. That changes everything too. So without meaning to, there are these costs. And I think if we lean more into administrative efficiency and some deregulation of something, there's probably 50 or 1,000 of these bills that unintentionally rack up costs. So if we look at things like that and seek to optimize, I think we'll find more funding, because they're really not going to grant it to the BSA or just grant us extra funding like we've been asking, right? We asked for 5%, we got 1.8, and honestly, it's a miracle given the economy right now. And fuel prices are skyrocketing, so those transportation costs continue to go up. All this to say, that's one issue. Okay. There's also the districts now. There's a study that districts have to list their vacant or unused land, and they define vacant or unused in such a way that if districts have this land, they're trying to acquire land in anticipation of building a school for new developments because they don't want to pay 8 times the rate for the property that it'll be once the development goes up. Is that technically vacant and unused? Now they have to study it and list it. What's going to happen with that in the future? So I think things like that might come down, are definitely coming down. I think we'll continue to push for fiscal transparency. And what I mean by that is, to those of you listening, look up Senate Bill 318, I think. That was pushed by Senator Gates. It was a method but it was a new listing in the FEFP, the Florida Education Finance Plan, to list the scholarship funding in its own line item. So,
and by scholarship, he means the Taxpayer Funded Voucher Program.
Yes, thank you. FES. So I'll stop using all the acronyms and the weird financial lingo because I'm not a finance guy.
We've heard.
Yeah. So there's money per student, and it's all factored into one equation, including the money that also goes towards the vouchers. So that ends up with district finance officers being unable to plan and ascertain the future based on who's leaving and who's coming, and it's harder to keep up with. So Senator Gates had this great idea. He said, we're just going to fund them in their own line item so that we can plan and account for it. And then also, he had a great quote from the floor. He said, if Florida's going to be the number one leader in school choice, then we need to be the number one leader in transparency for that, for the taxpayer, right? So the benefit of the taxpayer. That passed the Senate floor, but never got a House companion. So I do think that made it so far. It's like we talk about incremental victories, right? Was 318 a failure? Well, technically, yes, because it didn't get a House companion and it's lost. But now that it's gotten such support in the Senate, it will get increasing support in the House. We have to keep pushing. Yeah. So that's one thing that I think will definitely return. And anything, I'm just shaking a crystal ball right now. Things we will advocate for are decided by the school board members, right? As an association, we don't go rogue as much as I would love to. Andrea Messina is always pulling my leash, like, Joe, stop. That's not on the platform. Yeah. But we have guiding principles and issues of continuing concern, so it's not like our hands are tied on certain things. But really, we want to advocate for the things that our school board members today want us to advocate for. So we publish a platform every year that's voted on and ratified at our conferences, and they're all such great ideas. And those are the things that all 67 districts say, okay, yeah, we got to mobilize on this. So those are great things. I don't know I say all this to say I don't know what's going to be on the next one. Whatever it is, that's what we'll advocate for. But if I'm shaking my crystal ball, I do think things like that are going to come back around. So I think they call when we talk about vacant or unused land, they're calling that educational facility freedom. We're talking about FES transparency. And then we're also talking about administrative efficiency, or just kind of deregulation of some of the outdated mandates or the misused mandates that are taking more funds than people realize.
Which is interesting, that first one, because it seems like that could be a great bipartisan issue, right? Because on one side there's sort of, there's this claim that there's waste in the school districts, which I sincerely doubt, knowing how much you have to really comb through your budget to do anything. But there seems to be that perception. So I can see, maybe one side of the aisle being really focused on wanting to kind of limit and pull back that. And on the other side, wanting to just be kind of transparent about what the actual costs are and wanting to sort of level the playing field about administrative requirements and mandates across the board for all schools in Florida, whether they are public, traditional, whether they're charter, whether they're voucher schools. So it could be, it could be an issue that everyone can kind of agree on and come together.
Yeah, believe it or not. And it's so funny. I believe Senator Gates is a Republican, and his I think 318 passed unanimously, right? So it had a lot of Republican support, but I think on the House side it was a harder sell for various reasons. But I do think there are issues like this when it comes to funding and deregulation that, hey, ideologically, whether you're conservative or liberal, you support your public school being more competitive, being stronger, and so they fund it per pupil. But if a lot of those funds are going towards mandates that are not being correctly applied, or there's a wrinkle in the law, like the hazardous walkway we were talking about, we can all get behind making that more efficient and removing some of the red tape and helping school districts be competitive, right? If it's school choice and the money should follow the student, then so too should the cost. Let it be totally equal across the board, whether you're private, public, charter, whatever. Let all these schools have the same requirements that they serve the students with.
Hazardous Walkway sounds like a great metal album.
Yeah.
I don't know. It might encourage people to use the e-bikes and e-scooters, so we'd have another problem.
All right, we can't go down that rabbit hole. I have a broad question, since you are a professional at advocating. What advice would you give our listeners who have an opportunity to speak with an elected official or to make an appointment to speak with them, like just general advice for people who want to advocate for, what they care about with their elected officials?
Yeah. So step one, I would say, is make the appointment. You'd be so surprised. They really want to hear from you. And I say this to school board members, and they're elected officials who feel weird about reaching out to state senators or House representative members, or even their federal delegates. Like, they don't want to hear from me. They actually do. It's kind of crazy. So at least email them. I'll tell you, I email my city council when I know they recently repaved around a railroad that I cross every day, and it's seamless now. I sent them an email. I said, thank you. 3 of them responded that same day.
Because it was a positive comment. Yeah, they were so happy to receive it.
Good point. But yeah, so they always, and you'd be surprised how many times you can actually just meet with them for coffee or swing by their office and just have a quick 10, 15-minute discussion about your priorities. And sometimes they'll even give you insight as to, whether or not your priorities are going to be seen anywhere else. Yeah. Second thing is be prepared. Don't walk in to shoot the breeze. Like, come prepared and have hard data. They say stories tell the best data, but you have to have data behind the stories. It's a weird thing. Like, don't just walk in with a spreadsheet and say, line 3 funded 5% equal. No, it's like, all right, hey, listen, here's an example, right? Hazardous walkway is not funded. Like, having this funded in such a way that the state funding ends when the project isn't complete is actually costing my district I don't know, 200,000. I'm just making this up, but 200,000. If you come with that and you have a story with data attached, it's like, oh my gosh. And I think that's why we see so much litigation, or not litigation, but legislation over things like immigration, because there's always a story. There's a person, there's a face, someone gets hurt or someone gets sent away. It becomes personal. So no matter what your issue is, have something personal, but have it be tied to real data, not just an anecdotal story, but and then always be professional. Mm-hmm. Like in those meetings, if they say, well, I'm not voting your way, there's some part of the human spirit that always wants to, flip the table and storm out and be upset and deal with rejection that way. But just remember, right, there is no loss. You either won or you learned. So just leave that experience and see him again. See him again a year later and say, hey, remember that thing that you didn't vote my way on? And here's the increased cost. Here's how it's hurt our district again. So just be prepared, I guess, is the number one thing I would say.
That's great. Steph, what did you think of that advice as someone who takes meetings with constituents?
No, I agree. I think it's great advice. And one thing that I love is when sometimes I'll meet with someone on an issue, but then, inevitably we'll talk about 10 other things. And maybe it's not something that I can act on, or it's not on the agenda that week or the next week, but it might be on the agenda, or it might come up in a conversation 6 months from that point. And I can say, oh yeah, I remember I actually met with a parent and they shared this. And so it is really helpful I actually just love meetings to gather information. And even if it's not pertinent to, like I said, something that's going on right now, it might be in the future. And it also helps to form your own perspective about things too, to hear from parents or just stakeholders. I mean, I meet with lots of people who aren't parents and who have, who have opinions and have great ideas and have had different experiences in school. So I love it.
I mean, tune into the public comment section on any school board meeting and you'll see lots of interesting things our elected officials have to hear and listen to.
Good point.
But it's such it's often different. Like public comment is one thing, but then when you meet someone for coffee, it's a completely different thing. And, like you said, I think there's lots of people that I might not agree with them on everything, but you can almost always agree on something. And even if you don't, that's okay. And I think it's just important to recognize that just because we disagree on an issue doesn't mean that we can't agree on another kind And even if we can't agree on any issue, it doesn't mean that we can't be friends and we can't listen to each other's perspective and catch up over coffee because I kind of like to argue. So let's just get together and have a coffee and have a discussion or debate. And then it would just be, we can still be friends. We can still get along. We can still be colleagues. And, again, and I've shared with you, maybe this just comes from having family members that have very, very different views than me.
Yeah.
Because I think you can love someone and disagree with them on big issues.
I'm always trying to bait you into arguments and you almost never take it up.
Untrue.
So, the thing about Stephanie is that she won't just out argue you. You can also go jogging with her and she'll outrun you while arguing. We ran in Tallahassee and Stephanie's like giving me all this detail. We're talking about education policy and this, and how does this impact this? And I'm like, yeah, so this morning I did. It's like, all right. And it was like, what is it? Like after 2.5 miles, I was like, okay, we either have to continue running or walk and talk because I can't keep up with you anymore.
No. Well, first of all, thank you for meeting me. And so it's so great to have someone who will meet you in the morning to run because it keeps you accountable. It gets you outside
Exactly.
And it's fun. And it's a great, you get to accomplish something and get your exercise in for the day and get outside. So it's the perfect, win-win-win.
No, I agree entirely. Yeah. And one thing I will say about just taking meetings with people, while I was in law school, I really didn't know anyone. I was not connected. I had a classics background and I wanted to go on and be a professor. And when I wanted to get into education law, I just kind of sent emails. Like I just wanted to meet with people. So one of the people I just met with, I said, I just want to pick your brain about how you got into education law. What do you think? One of those people was Joy Frank. And I don't know if you ever got to meet her, but she was the general counsel for the Superintendents Association, FADS. Mm-hmm. And we went and got breakfast. And then after breakfast, she said, okay, well, how would you like to work for us? Like, I can't guarantee the pay will be great, but you will get great experience. I'll bring you in all these meetings. But yeah, sure. So that was my kind of foray. And then after that, I sent an email to a guy named Terry Harmon, who's an education litigator at the Sniffen and Harmon firm. But he's fantastic. They responded to my email asking me to come in for an interview. And I just asked him to get coffee because I wanted to ask him what education litigation was like. So I worked there for a couple of years, and just one opportunity led to the other. And so I will tell this to people who want to meet with their elected officials. You have no idea what's going to happen after you send that email or make that call. So set the meeting because you might have someone amazing like Stephanie who's going to take the meeting and want to talk to you. And you never know what's going to result from that conversation.
That's incredible. Steph, have you ever hired someone after having coffee with them?
No, but I will say last week, we met for dinner, and we ended the dinner with, I'm pretty sure you getting me to agree to write for the Education Law newsletter.
I can't wait to read your article. They are out, due at the end of August.
See how seamless that was?
Yeah, see,
you never know. You think you're just going out to grab a bite to eat, and then you end up with a new assignment.
Well, we need your perspective. That's why we need, this is the time to plug the Florida Education Law Committee for the Florida Bar.
I love it. Okay, well, before we end, I like to ask people, and you referenced this at the beginning, but if you did have time to relax and recharge, what would you do? So how do you relax and recharge to
I consider
stay in it?
I consider exercise definitely a de-stressor and something that keeps me sane. So I try to always make time for that. And then also reading, love to read, and I love movies. So I took my mother to see The Odyssey on Sunday, and she loved it. And that's like the second time I'd seen it. So getting to the movies, any kind of escapism, like running, where I'm not actively like reading a law, or just relaxing, watching a movie, getting into someone else's world for a little while. Those things help me stay sane. So books, movies, running, that kind of stuff.
What was your take on The Odyssey?
Loved it.
What was your favorite part?
Favorite part?
Yeah, I mean, very old text, but what was your favorite part of the movie?
So I could give you like a scene or a thing that I thought was great, but truly I think the meticulousness of the research that went into it, like every sound you heard, like when you heard like the flute sounding thing, they hired classical scholars to help them recreate an aulos, the double-reeded flute.
Wow.
Which hasn't been around for years. So they hired these classicists to come in and like help them make the sound, so that even the sound was like ancient. Everything you hear that's a symbol is bronze. They're making it bronze. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
All right, those of you that have seen it, they talk about the Sea People. The Sea People are that's a real event, right? The Bronze Age collapsed, and some of the only writings we have that detail it are from burned clay in these old cities that they found. And they say the Sea People are coming. We're requesting more spears. We're requesting more men. So there's this whole thing among scholars that study like the Bronze Age, and there's like, oh yeah, the Sea People came. Then there was like a societal collapse. And then they came back much later as like the class, like the Homeric era Greeks that we knew, that was like 800 BCE. So the fact they mentioned the Sea People and then tied it into a greter theme about what happens when we lose decency in the world was probably the greatest thing I took out of that movie.
Yeah, I thought that was really powerful.
Yeah,
I was not expecting that kind of detailed and historic answer.
To be fair, I did tell Eddie, I said let's work to not make this a podcast about the Odyssey, but I can't.
Well, you were a classics major, so had to ask.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and to talk to us and just to share a little bit about what you do. I think, part of the goal is just to help people understand just this broader picture of what's going on in Florida education and all of the different parts and groups that work together, and just and also just to highlight some of the great work that you're doing. I think you're doing a phenomenal job, and I feel so lucky to be able to work with you.
Thank you so much. I feel lucky to serve school board members like yourself who are just so invested and care so much. And thank you all for having this podcast, for providing a voice and putting stuff out there for people to listen to that is so informative and so helpful. So I'm so honored to be a part of this and to be here. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's very sweet of you to say. All right. Well, I guess that's it.
We'll end on that.
We'll end on that. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.